Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. A Time magazine guy says Fox News lies. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. For the past few weeks, there hasn't been a lot of news in America. Healthcare debate goes on forever. Afghanistan not going well. The economy's still stuck in the mud. But those stories have been around for months. So when the White House attacked Fox News, the media woke up. Something new, something controversial. Everybody had an opinion. But some of the opinions are downright irresponsible. Enter Time magazine columnist Joe Klein, who can be astute, not this time. Klein writes, quote, Fox News peddles a fair amount of hateful crap. Some of it borders on sedition. Much of it, flat out untrue, unquote. But even though he has plenty of space, Klein fails to illustrate his point, providing no example of what he says is untrue. So I, being a fair kind of guy, gave Klein a chance to come on the Factor this evening and provide backup, to make his case specifically, rather than irresponsibly. A Time publicist told us Mr. Klein is unavailable. Sure. Truth is, Mr. Klein is scared. As a truth seeker myself, I'd like to know exactly how, as Klein puts it, Fox News spreads seditious lies to its demographic sliver of an audience. That's rich. The Factor reaches more people in 1 hour than Time magazine does in a week. Talk about slivers. Now, what's the point of this other than to hold Joe Klein accountable? Excellent question, and I'm glad you guys asked it. I think the continuing hysteria surrounding Fox News illuminates our increasing influence in America. This is now the network of record, and the left doesn't like it. But not all liberals are like Joe Klein. Some see the absurdity of the White House attacking FNC.
It's not only aggressive, it's almost Nixon-esque. I mean, you think of what Nixon and Agnew did with their enemies list and their attacks on the media, and certainly Vice President Agnew's constant denunciation of the media. Of course, then there was a conservative president denouncing a liberal media, and of course, a lot of liberals said, oh, that's ridiculous, that's an infringement on the freedom of press. And now you see a lot of liberals almost kind of applauding what the White House is doing to Fox News, which I think is distressing.
NPR. Now, soon after he said that, Ken Rudin apologized for comparing Mr. Obama to Mr. Nixon in the enemies list deal, but his basic point is valid. Any attack on Fox News about how unfair is celebrated by the left because FNC has the ear of the country. Finally, I think it's time for the Fox News controversy to fade. I hope it does. I like working here, and I'm amazed that we are so powerful, but I want the nation to see us as a force of good, as giving voice to all kinds of opinion, which we do. So I'm ready to go trick-or-treating with Rahm Emanuel. What a scare that would be. And that's a memo. Now for Top Story Night Reaction. With us, Fox News analyst Bernie Goldberg. You know Joe Klein, right?
Not personally.
You don't know him? I met him a few times. I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but this is not his finest moment.
No. Let me put this delicately. I think there's enough on this channel that would make a liberal commentator like Joe Klein or a liberal president like Barack Obama not happy. And I don't have a problem with that. But when you start throwing words around like sedition, I mean, who exactly at Fox News is inciting a rebellion against the government of the United States of America?
Steve Ducey.
Right. That's what sedition means.
Of course.
Now, he talks also about hateful crap. That's an interesting point. Those are his words. Not long ago, a commentator called the President of the United States. He said the President of the United States is either a compulsive liar or the idiot in chief. That sounds like hateful crap to me, yet Mr. Klein had nothing to say about that. Maybe that's because the commentator was a liberal at MSNBC and the president was George W. Bush. I would take Joe Klein a little more seriously if he were a little more consistent with his outrage.
Nobody cares about Joe Klein, with all due respect to Joe. Maybe his mom does, but that's about it. The fact of the matter is, you write a column sometimes, I write a column every week. You back up what you say. If you say somebody's spreading seditious lies, you say, here's a few examples.
Right.
This guy doesn't. And Time magazine lets it go. But let's get to the most important question. Here's what I think. I think the Obama White House, Joe Klein, the left-wing media are all going crazy because Fox News, ready for it out there? Ready for it now? Fox News is now the most powerful news organization in the United States of America, and that means in the world. That's why this is happening.
This question embarrasses me because the only reason that would be true is since I'm a regular.
That's true, and it's happened since we brought you on.
That's what I mean.
Don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed.
I'm modest, and that kind of stuff bothers me. Look, you could also make.
But address my question.
Yeah, it could. Well, I just did. But you could
address it seriously, Goldberg. I'm going to whack you. I think that we are now the most powerful news organization in the country.
2 points. You could certainly make a case that the New York Times, with its, forget about circulation, forget about the fact that they don't have any money. All the mainstream, I use that term,
still calls loosely from them.
In other words, they set the agenda for ABC News, NBC News, and if the New York Times went on strike tomorrow morning, they wouldn't know what to put on the CBS Evening News tomorrow night.
But
in that sense, the Times is important. Here's why Fox is important. Let's put it this way. Here's why they're going after Fox. If Fox were merely seen as a network that houses more than its share of conservatives, they wouldn't care. It's because you're successful.
That's right.
It's not because you're speaking only to Kool-Aid drinkers, and there are some out there. It's because you're speaking to moderates and independents and Democrats who live between Manhattan and Malibu.
Look what's happened.
That scares them.
Look what's happened. Fox News, 13 years on the air, okay, wipes out every other cable network. It's not even close, okay? Now we're approaching, the factor is approaching Katie Couric numbers. We're real close to Katie Couric numbers. We beat everybody else. Good Morning America, right. Nightline. I think the Today Show's a little bit ahead of us, but it's close.
Right.
So, then you have Fox Nation, the website, Fox Nation. Huge, huge. So now these people have figured out, you know what? While we weren't looking or while we were complaining about it, Fox News has now become the most powerful news agency in the country.
When they weren't looking, ordinary Americans, not simply see the conservatives.
No,
they'll write off.
It's across the board.
That's what.
Right.
That's
what they don't like.
That's what frightens them.
Right.
Because now, when this network runs with a story like Van Jones, which Joe Klein says isn't all that important, but I think it's very important. I mean, here's a guy who wants an investigation to see if George Bush was behind 9/11. When Fox runs with that, and with so many people watching who aren't necessarily conservative, again, the increase in moderates, independents, and Democrats, the other networks pick it up. This is why the White House is trouble, and this is why liberals in general
that's what's happened.
Are trouble. Can I just make a comment about the White House?
Sure.
They started this with this war.
Right.
I think a simple geography lesson would really end the war against Fox News. They need to understand that they're not in Chicago anymore. You know, like Dorothy realized we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. They're not in Chicago anymore. The White House isn't City Hall in Chicago. Barack Obama is not a mayor. He's the president. And Haldeman and Ehrlichman, you know, aren't ward captains in Chicago. Taking on an entire news network as opposed to criticizing this show or that show or this statement or that statement, that's not presidential. That's what a mayor does when he has an enemy, you know, in the city council. It's beneath the president to do this, and I hope they've learned their lesson. And you said it in the talking points. You hope it stops. I hope it stops too. It's not good for the president.
No. All right, Bernie Goldberg, everybody. Thanks very much, Bernie. It's always good to see you in town.